You started. You started.
I want to see one of these if I can trick you.
No, no, I
Hello,
know you too well.
Yeah, I need a ring light, but let's see
Yes,
how long I'll have to be in my house.
I'm
Hello,
unfavorably lit. Hello.
hello,
Hello.
we are live.
I feel like
Yeah,
we're talking on a string, well, like two cans on a string. Can you hear me, Bambos? Are you on the other side?
I just realized that my whole neighborhood can hear me talk. So today we have Dave Lowe,
Low, not
Lowe,
Lowy. Dave Lowe. No
Lowe,
Lowies. Dave
and
Lowe.
this is also a friend from Andy's past.
Yes. We have bringing Dave Lowe on. He's been creating props and doing art direction and TV and motion pictures for over 30 years. And I put this title because it honestly is how I feel. This is the coolest job I know. So we're going to discuss this for the hour on
A
a
wonderful
wonderful, okay,
chaos.
so,
Us,
uh,
us,
soon. Bye.
us, us.
So this is cool because this is like we're going through this one family and we're just picking them off one by one. So we got Ted Lowe. If you hadn't seen the show with Ted Lowe, it was Mr. Mom. And basically, it was him reversing roles with his wife, where he's really taking care of the two kids while
Mm.
he's out doing stuff. And so that was a really wonderful show. And then we had a second individual from the same kind of family, Kirk Scott, and he did or does stop motion animation films. Caroline was one of the movies he did that we discussed with
Yeah.
him for the hour. And Dave Lowe is the older brother. And when I was a kid, I would sneak into Dave Lowe's house and he'd have the coolest shit around that he'd make. And why I said this is the coolest job that I know is because Dave's brain works similarly to how my brain works, except he does it professionally and I do it as an amateur. And what I mean by that is Dave sees shit and he says, I could make that into a spaceship. Or he sees like the most abstract little thing that you would see. Like he'll take a trash can cover and then he'll paint it and put it right side up, upside down, or sideways. And all of a sudden it becomes a satellite dish for a feature film and a sci-fi movie. So in a way, I see through his work the way his brain works. So I'm
Mm.
imagining to myself, he walks down the street and looks at everything that exists and says, oh, that would make a good spaceship, or that would make a great futuristic this, or this would make a great alternative that. So I love seeing his work because it becomes this kind of inspiration for me when I see things. And you see, when I walk past a trash bin, Ronnie takes me by the hand and says, no, Andy, no, don't. Like,
Yeah.
I'm only looking for what I can make out of this that hasn't been utilized yet. So that was my excitement with bringing him out and how I came up with the title, The Coolest Job in the World. Yeah.
And we both know he's really excited to talk about.
Yeah. In that Lowe family that I know of, there's some people that like to be more in front of the camera and a lot more people that like to be nowhere near a camera. Dave is certainly on the not only not wanting to be near a camera, but not wanting to be anywhere near anyone who wants to be near a camera. So he's sort of like two steps removed in that process, as far as I've seen.
Yeah, and live.
Live. Double it because it can't be edited out. So, and in spite of that, I think he has appreciated us and how we've been holding space for the rest of the family. So he said that he'd come on and discuss a little bit like what life looks like when you create things. So I was more interested in the creativity and how his brain works and what, like, how he comes up with the ideas and, you know, some of the props that probably failed and some of them that were better than he had expected. That was sort of my hope to discuss with him on the show. Yeah.
Beautiful. Shall we bring him on?
Yeah, we shall.
Mr. Dave Lowe.
Hey,
How are you
Lo. Very well. How are you?
guys? Good, good. I've never been called Low Wow or Lowy before.
Yeah. Well, we're
Lowy.
Lowy.
Lowy,
It's your French name, Lowe.
right?
Lowe.
So, anything in the introduction that was off, or you'd like to correct?
It's probably less a need to use. It's more a need to use junk because I don't have the money, as opposed
Oh.
to really being truly creative. You know?
Is that right? Because that's a good question to start out with creativity. Because in a way, I believe that you can be even more creative when you're looking at junk and turning it into something magical, as opposed to having ultimate resources to create whatever you'd like. Is that true, or what were your
Yeah,
experiences?
yeah. A lot of necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, a good chunk of it is uh, exactly that. I mean, no joke. I mean, you have to deal with budgets, so get more bang for your buck when you use old junk. And then sometimes you could have a project where you've got a lot of money to spend, and then you don't spend it wisely. You end up throwing it all away on the world's most expensive gallon of paint, and you realize, oh man, I could have done so much more. Because at the end of the day, when it's on camera or on the screen, nobody's going to notice if it's $300 paint versus $30 paint.
Yeah.
As long as it's used well. So
Yeah.
Dave, how like Andy spoke about when he was a kid and he would come to your house. Like, take me back to the moments that you remember in your childhood when you started to create stuff, and maybe for you it wasn't a big deal, but for everyone it was like, wow, this is incredible.
Not to be gross, but my mom and dad used to joke that they knew I was going to be creative because I was using what was in my diapers on the crib, drawing, finger painting, if you know what I mean. So I've been creating from that age.
Were they trying to say that you were they trying to make another point that you were creating crap, or were they just saying that you were?
There you go. Very good. Yeah. So yeah, I've just been creative from the get-go, and yeah, I just making, building, creating, drawing, cartooning, you name it. And also my grades sucked. I was a terrible student, I was a proverbial nerd and the outcast kid. So being able to draw really got you popular.
Yeah, because I mean, I would go to your house and you would draw and sketch things that were really magnificent. They were I would say they took your imagination. And I know you were always a little bit. I remember it a bit gory in your portrayals in that age.
Did you say Gloria or Gorier?
Gory, like a little
Gory.
bit.
Yeah. But I think everybody goes through that phase. I went through into comic books and drawing and the horror movies and all that stuff. So everybody goes through that. I think any artist, cartoonist, illustrator goes through that phase of like, oh, bloody's cool. Yeah, make the head explode, make the eyeballs pop out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Where would you find your inspiration? Because back then we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have internet. So where would you find inspiration for your creations?
I mean, very similar to the way it is today. I mean, yeah, the internet's an amazing thing, but like I said, I was into comic books, I was into cartoons, the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons. In those years, you discover anime, go to comic book shops, even the comics at the newsstand. I mean, I remember comics on the newsstand. Forget comic book shops, and movies and regular television, the old sci-fi movies that had come on Saturday nights, on the local channel. So the inspiration came from everywhere. And I also had my dad was also very talented an artist, and my great uncle Tom, he was an incredible artist. And so I was brought up with just them kind of doodling at the table, and so yeah, it was kind of just, I was drawn to it as opposed to seeking out. Yeah. What it was I wanted to be creative. So you seek it out when you want to,
Yeah.
My mom brought me up on classic illustrated books, Howard Pyle and C. Wyeth, all the great old illustrators. So the inspiration was easy to find back then. Now it's even easier, but
yeah.
It wasn't a difficult thing to find.
And when you were going to school, you said you were a bit of an outcast in the beginning. How did the school system support you in your art, if anything?
My grade school was terrific, and all the, you know, all the teachers I had were very supportive. You know, they encouraged me. You know, and then I remember I did kind of an in-class comic book where I kind of did superhero versions of all the kids in the class. You know, Kevin Brown, and called him Super Kev. I had Laura Foyce became the spaghetti. I did all these crazy characters. So that became fun, and that was encouraged. The teachers actually got into it, and they wanted to read the comics too because they were having fun with it. And then in high school, there wasn't a true art department in my high school I went to, or art class, but teachers gravitated, or they allowed me to delve in there. They had me paint the football banners and the school play posters, and I became the high school cartoonist. I did a cartoon in the school paper. And so I was very lucky in that a lot of the people that were my educators, my teachers, and you know, the grown-ups, they all really encouraged it. Nobody ever talked me down about it at all. Outside of when I said I wanted to go to art school for college, then my dad was like, "Oh, Jesus.
Get a real job."
Yeah. He wasn't that bad, but there was that moment of like.
It's funny because I've always had the idea, because your dad was also, you know, a director.
Right. Director, producer. Yeah, for years.
And Bambos, I'll have to show you a video, but there was a very famous show in the US called Candid Camera. I think that was probably in the 80s, maybe even the 70s.
Right.
Where and his dad made these skits where people would be brought into situations they weren't knowing, and then they would play pranks on them. And
well, he didn't do Candid Camera. Candid Camera came before. He did the newer version, Bloopers and Practical Jokes.
Oh, okay. Bloopers and Practical Jokes. Sorry, yeah. I'm corrected. And I don't know the difference. But in this show, it was so funny is that in one of the shows they did, they actually turned the tables and they did a practical joke on him as he thought he was doing it on somebody else.
Yeah.
So there's a TV, it's a beautiful moment where they're just fucking with him as he's thinking that he's trying to fuck with somebody else. And you just see him lighting up the cigarettes and getting more and more nervous as the skit goes worse and worse and worse as he. So my question to you is when you're in that environment. Now I wasn't raised with creativity around me in terms of, like, my mom, she liked to do stuff, so I can't say that completely. But in your life, how do you feel like having your dad being the director and producer, how did that influence you and what you like thought you could do with your talents, or, you know, what your interests were drawn towards?
Wow. You know, I think again, it was just that his life was an adventure and everything was creative. It was like he'd always be, you know, traveling somewhere. He worked for years for 60 Minutes too. And so he was traveling to France and Europe and all these crazy places. And then every job was different, you know? And so that inspired my creativity in a sense that, it wasn't established that you had to be locked down doing that one thing all the time. You know, if something's a project, work on it, you get it done, and you move on to something else. And so that, I guess, in a sense, and like I said, my dad was just a creative guy in general. Like he loved to draw too. So, and he was always very inspiring with supporting my art and all that stuff. So just him as a father helped my creativity. But his job, his work, it was, because even with a dad who was in entertainment, right? You still enjoy entertainment. So my dad was a celebrity to me as a kid because he was very proud. He was like, "Oh, my dad knows Johnny Carson. My dad's worked with Johnny Carson," you know. And it's like, it's kind of cool because you're like, you're a fan of that, but at the same time you're connected to it, you know. Yeah. So it's something. It's nice. It's fun. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've noticed in my own life that like the areas, this is an aside, but a very similar thing I've been discovering lately is for me to get up and move to another house and to leave everything that I had behind is really easy because I did it so often as a kid. I think we moved like 6 times or some absurd amount in a very short time. So in a very young age, I was surrounded by this, oh, it's natural to take everything you own, put it in a box and bring it to another place. And it's weird because when you get older and you think, oh, we're just going to get up, put a box in, and you forget that that's something you became accustomed to over time because as a kid that just was normal. And so in a weird way, I think I'm only more recently grasping the things that are so normal for me, where if I say, Ronnie, let's just take all our things and we'll move out in a day, and she hadn't had that experience that I had, it is a little bit different for her to have that same experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's like the hardest part of moving is taking all the junk I've collected over the years. Like, I don't mind moving, except now that I'm old. It's, the back isn't holding up like it used to. But, you just become a hoarder in a sense,
Yeah.
especially in my job. So,
Yeah.
I psychologically, I don't mind moving. There's always a great fresh start to it. No matter where you go, even with work. Just you're working at this studio, then you're moving over to this studio, and then in your home, it's always nice to have a fresh start. But
Yeah.
so I agree with you on that. It's like you're kind of used to that. So it's not trauma if I have to get up and move to another place.
Yeah.
Nice. When someone wants to work with you, Dave, like, help me understand. Do you go in and you look at the script and you create, or are there guidelines? Like, how does that work?
Every project is different. On some of the shows I work on, it's all scripted. It says, okay, we need this, we need that, we need that. And so you just base it off what the script says and what the needs are. And then you kind of, they're hiring you for a vision or an idea. So you create that vision and idea, or you give them choices, photographs, sketches, whatever. And then, they sort through it and say, no, do this, make it more this, make it more this. And then in other cases, it's really hands off. They need you to give them the idea, especially the DIY shows, the how-to shows that I've worked on. Those are the ones where it's like, we need to create something with a Christmas theme for this segment. What do you got? And so you come up with ideas and projects, and or the makeover shows are like that. You go into a blank space and, okay, we want to make it nautical themed. Okay, go start sketching.
Wow.
So it's a little of both. But it always depends on the job.
So, do you ever get into situations where you have a blank mind and nothing is coming to you? Like, what's your creative process? Or do you have a team where you're like having fun, like, hey, we should try this or that, and like
again, every project is different. It's with some of the assistants and prop people I've worked with, it's like, it's exactly that. It's sort of like you can let the ideas bounce around and everybody's like, oh, I got an idea. Oh, we could do that. And it's like, great. Okay. Then you kind of funnel it in and figure out the best look for it. And then there are moments where you kind of draw a complete blank, like you've got nothing, but then I found to have no fear when those moments hit. You just start. It's like a blank page. It's like, you sit and stare at it and like, what are we going to do? But once you start putting something on paper or get something going, like Andy was talking about the trash can. If you had a trash can, you just start gluing stuff to it, something comes out of that. And then you can morph and change it. And then the ideas start clicking on how to make it bigger and better. So that's what usually happens to me when I draw a complete
What does that
blank.
remind you of, Bombos?
R2D2.
Yeah, that as well. There was a moment, by the way, there's this Dutch thing, a pottery we call Delft. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's like
plates and
it's plates,
jars.
white polyester with blue ink on it. And and we in the building I'm now in, we've got a few hundred pieces of it on a wall. It's pretty outrageous, actually.
Nice.
But some of the pieces broke and fell, and there were extras left over. So I started gluing it together and made this sort of very high artwork where it was just this pieces of Delft hanging in the air, and it was just
wait for it. Wait
go
for
there.
it.
until the motherfucker Bambos thought he was going to clean it by putting it in the shower and running a shower head over something that's precariously sitting, just holding itself together by sheer will. And but the funny thing was, and that's why I was saying earlier that your job was something that that for me, because when I start gluing it together without knowing how it's going to come out ahead of time, there's a zone I go into, which is, it's a bit like, I'm going to let my intuition guide me. It's not all that different than my writing style. I don't necessarily know what I'm going to write before I start writing. And it's the same is true when I'm working with like this physical structures where I start gluing it and I'm like, oh shit, oh, that worked out much better than I expected. So I hear the similarly in your experience.
Yeah, and that happens even with set decorating. You know, you're not too sure. It's like, just put the chair in that corner and we'll go from there. You know, and then you kind of grow, and then eventually you're like, oh, the chair looks better over here, you know. So yeah, I mean, you know, and that's part of the fun is when you hit that zone, there's no greater feeling for me, you know, when you're kind of right there and you're really feeling it, because then the ideas start, you know, the ideas start to hit, and you're like, oh, and there's nothing better than everybody going, oh, what if we did this? And they all get excited, you know. It's like, and that's fun to see that energy grow around the project as it's going. And then there are moments like your creation where you've glued it together and it looks great, and it's just got to make it 30 seconds before the camera stops filming. And then it's like, cut, and then it crumbles and falls apart. You're like, okay, at least we got it that far. You know?
Yeah.
When you started out, you were an artist, right? So how the hell do you start to put pricing on something that you don't even know? Like, you know you're good at something, but how do you connect it to this industry? How did you go about to actually?
How do you translate your talent into something you can sell, like you can get paid for?
Well, I mean, that's you know, it's like anything else. You're a hired gun, you know, especially, you know, when I started as an illustrator. It's like, that was the fine line between, you know, that's, you know, they call it work for hire. You know, it's like the artist does it for themselves. And so you price it based on your vision. It's your art. You know, an illustrator or a cartoonist or an artist, you know, you're being hired to create for someone, right? So pricing gets very, you know, that's a whole, we could do a whole nother episode just on pricing. It becomes,
but would someone come to you and say, I need a single piece, I want you to make this, and this is how much budget I have for it? Does that also happen?
Oh, well, that's usually the way it works. It's one or the other. It's you know, they say, okay, we've got so much money, here's what we need, and then you go from there. You know,
give me a sense, budgeting wise, what's like the highest level budget and the lowest level budget that you would work on?
Oh, no joke. It could be anywhere between, you got $3,000 to decorate 4 rooms, including the props, including all that, and then you can get where here's $10,000 and we just need one really cool piece.
Got it.
You know, and so again, it's
all specific to the project.
It is, and the production company and the network and all that stuff. They all work with a budget, you know. So it's like they tell you what they can spend, and in some cases, they don't know how much something's really going to work. They know what they want.
Yeah.
So, you know, they'll say, you tell me how much it'll cost, and so I create a budget, and then it goes from there. You break it down. And usually those are the moments where you realize you underbid. You go, it's going to cost this much. You wince, and they go, okay, great. And you're like, damn, I should ask for more. You know?
Oh wow. Did you ever say no to a project for values, or just because you didn't like the client, or because you were like, oh, I'm not the right person for this project?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's like you got to know your limitations, you know. So, you know, I'm not a real contemporary decorator. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not the guy who's going to go in.
If it's a future set or something, that wouldn't be your bag.
The more themey, the better for me, right? You know, or especially children's books are fun or over the top. You know, if somebody wanted a really chic, I could do it. But if somebody really wanted a super chic looking, beach house that looked like it came out of an architecture magazine. And that's where you're like,
Yeah.
That's where I get a little nervous because that's really not my thing.
Got it.
But in terms of moral grounds, there's been a couple of projects where I've kind of bowed out because it was like, I got to call one day to do a porn. So I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do a porn movie. Sorry.
But I was going to say, if they would need a set design for that. That's kind of fascinating to begin with.
Sure. I mean, it's still a movie at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just didn't want your name on the subtitles.
Yeah, he's creative director Dave Lowe.
Hey, is that Dave?
Hey, what do you do? Do you get to take the props home with you? What's the rules on the props that you create?
Again, depends on the project. And
okay, but do you sometimes take props home with you?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
Okay.
Especially like ones that I've custom made, I like to hold on to, but usually, I mean, they call them props because it's short for property, and it's property of the company that, you've bought it for or made it for, so it's really up to them. In some cases, they don't care. They're like, we don't want to deal with this stuff. You take it. And in some cases, to help the budget, if you bought or purchased stuff, you try and return it and put the money back into the budget, So,
nice.
Again, it all depends. And there's some stuff I made or built that I never want to see again. So I'm like, please, somebody take it,
Have you seen sometimes that like you created stuff, because there's two things. There's the creation of the thing, and then there's how it looks on camera. So you can create something that's brilliant, but doesn't look particularly great on camera, or the opposite, where it was like horrible, but on camera it looks great. So how often is that the case for you?
Not very often. I mean, occasionally it happens. I mean, I don't know if you guys really last time you went to a play or something, but usually props in theater are really theatrical. Like an example, years ago, Phantom of the Opera I saw, and the skull that they were using as one of the props, it is so horribly painted. It's just black with white, and there's no gradation, there's no subtlety to it. It's just terrible. But from the back row of the theater, it looks amazing. You can see it, And so the same goes for sometimes with the props you build. It's like you got to know if it's going to be a hero prop and you're going to get a real tight close-up on it, like here. That's where you want to go in and really put in the fine details and make sure it looks great, and make sure there are no glue marks and all that. And then there are other times, if it's going to be a big piece way in the distance, that's a moment you just slap it on and hope to God it doesn't fall apart,
Yeah.
It won't be. So that plays into it a lot, But again, it depends on the project,
Nice.
Yeah.
Dave,
interesting.
Do you like your job?
I love it.
You think it's one of the coolest jobs out there?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Great. So we keep the title, Andy.
Keeps the title.
What was like your most
worst job in the world?
No,
exactly.
What was your most exciting setup? Like as you were working, you were so excited and so much in the zone. You had the full body fuck yes to it. You're like, wow, I'm doing this, and people pay me for it.
Oh, that happens a lot. I mean, that happens. I mean, I have a lot of moments of that where it's like, just from a creativity standpoint, I'm very blessed and lucky that I've worked on a lot of shows and a lot of projects where there's that moment you're just like, look what I'm doing. This is fun. This is fun. But then there are moments where you're like sitting there and you're like, I hate this and I'm angry and everything sucks. And you come home and you're like, what was I complaining about? I was complaining about painting eggs. Like, I wasn't digging ditches. I wasn't like, down in a pit, slurping up toxic waste. I was painting Easter eggs and I was getting angry. It's like, those are the moments you're like, you just want to slap yourself.
I mean, you can always hire someone to do the jobs you don't like to do, right?
Sure.
Outsource, yes. So what has been one of the coolest jobs that you've ever done? Like it really expanded the way you think. Like you had to really bend your mind. if anything?
Wow.
Deadpool.
That's a tough one. What was that?
Deadpool.
Deadpool. I wish. Gosh, I remember. I think the first I did a show for the Sci-Fi Channel in the early days when the Sci-Fi Channel was brand new, and it was really a young network, and it just started. There's a show called Sci-Fi Buzz, which was like kind of an entertainment show about science fiction and fantasy and all that stuff. And I think it was the second season, maybe, they let me really physically build a real set for it, right? I mean, the walls, everything. And I could go crazy. And I thought, and it was just me and a good friend of mine, an old friend who was my go-to carpenter back in those days, Greg. That was the show where I was like, I want to do this for a living. It was like really just, again, using junk and cardboard and glue and all that stuff. And there was that moment I stood back and I go, look what I created, you know? And that was fun. That was, I think, you know, and I look at that set now and I wish I could do it over again. I've learned so much since then. But at the time, that was a cool moment. That was a neat moment, you know? Because it was something physical and real, and I built it from scratch, you know, with Greg's help, obviously. But so I hope that answers your question. Because beyond that, I've had so many projects that there's this moment of like, how did I end up doing this? This is great. This is awesome. You know, it's you know, and especially to be able to do projects that you always dreamed of. Like there's always been in your head, you've wanted to build something, and then suddenly the moment arrives where you get that chance. Like the show I worked on Hallmark, I've always wanted to make Captain Kirk's chair from the Enterprise. You know,
Nice.
Right? William Shatner came on as a guest, and so the show in those days, we would, to try to get the guests to stick around for the full 2 hours, we sometimes create a project, whether it's a cooking segment or maybe a DIY that was in theme with them to get them to hang out and do the project. So I pitched, let's build Captain Kirk's chair as a DIY. And the producers were like, yeah, let's do it. So not only did I get to make Captain Kirk's chair, but I got to be there with William Shatner. And you know, it was just, I mean, that's a geek dream come true.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Those are the cool moments where you're having, you know, something you get a chance to create something you've always wanted to create, you know?
Was he as self-absorbed as he looks like when he gets interviewed or not?
He's no. He was actually very, very friendly, but I know it was funny. He when we were done, he wanted out. He wasn't like, I'm gonna hang out and chat. He was just gone. He's like, goodbye, see you later. You know,
well, hey, listen, he's got a life as well.
Like right there, but he definitely wasn't like, I'm gonna chill out by craft service and have a cup of coffee. You know?
No. I recently saw, and I mean, there's a lot of humility in the Lowe family, right? So the props you create are really quite spectacular, although we're not looking at them as we speak. And one of them I saw that you recently posted was the one where I don't even know what show it was for, but it was like some sort of tower like thing that had all these arms coming out of it. And it was,
I think it's like the resonator. I think, yeah, it was, I just did that, December?
Yeah,
November?
it was not that long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was for a company called Full Moon Features, which is kind of a horror movie sci-fi company that makes, you know, they're open about it, pretty schlocky B movies. But they have a cult following. They've been around since the 80s.
Oh, wow.
And so they're still going strong. They're knocking out movies. So they created a H.P. Lovecraft. You guys familiar with H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer? He's a well-known horror writer. Anyway, it was based on one of his short stories. And the resonator was this contraption that opens up a portal and an interdimensional, whatever, but yeah. So
but when I looked at that resonator, like what I loved is that on it you would point out some of the things you were using. I think in that instance it might have even been the top of a trash can that was one of the pieces on it. So, but the funny thing is that it looks so fantastic on it. You'd never know it was a trash can unless you pointed out that it was a trash can.
Yeah, well, I mean that's part of when I joked about budgets, but it is true. But at the same time, that's one of the things I love. Like when I get a chance to turn junk into something, there's nothing better. I mean, it goes back to, back in the early days where, like, I've told the story before, but so anybody who's watching and knows me, I'm sorry to tell you a story again, but it's like when you were a kid and you're reading all the magazines and the how-to behind the scenes of Star Wars and all the, and you suddenly see that the guys literally were taking 2 paint buckets and gluing them together, and they're just adding model kit parts to it. You're like, wait a minute, because in your head as a kid, you're thinking, you're seeing this stuff, and you're like, there's a magic to it that you have no idea. Like, that's a skill. No one, and then to actually discover these professionals are using stuff you have in your own house, gluing it together and making stuff. That opens your brain up, and you're like, ah. And so any chance I get to do that, that's what, in a weird way, when you do stuff like that, you really feel like a real professional prop maker, model maker, because that seems to be the trick. That's been like when we were filming up on the Universal backlot, I was taking a walk around in the Western town, and there was a big kind of, in one of the prop areas, a big Roman chariot wheel, right? Just sitting there. And I went up and looked, and I realized that the metal studs that were on there, they were just pieces of wood that they snipped off and glued on. And I'm going, this is Universal Studios. Again, it's like you think there's some professional magic to this stuff, and at the end of the day, it's all just simple tricks and nonsense.
Someone with a glue gun and some paint.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's it. That to me creatively that's the joy of making some of this stuff. Where if you can fool someone to believing what you've created is what you want it to be, but then they go, wait, that's a milk carton. You're like, yeah.
I got a.
Yeah, but
go ahead,
it's your creation and special effects, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Do you have a junkyard of place like where you keep stuff that you're like, I don't know what I would use this for, but it feels like it could be used somewhere down the road? Do you have like a place where you keep shit?
I'm in a much smaller. Thank God, I'm in a much smaller apartment, but I still have 2 or 3 boxes that are just full of stupid stuff. I could pull it over for you right now. Just
no, we're good.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean about moving. This is where it sucks for me to move, because it's just full of odd bits of junk that I don't want to get rid of it, because I know that could be something cool,
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. It's like, and it could be the most random stuff. It's like, oh, the cap from a half and half container, ooh, that's a good button. Throw that in the bin, stuff like that. So there's a fine line there between being psychologically damaged and being on the show Hoarders.
Yeah.
And, doing my job, But yeah, there are times, like you said, it's like, walking down the street, I'll see something and, somebody's thrown in the alley to get rid of it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. And already my gears are turning of what it could be, But so it's like, nope. Like the old house I lived in, the garage was just full of that stuff.
There was no car.
There was no car. It was my workshop / cavern of troll gold, dwarf. It was just full of like cans and bottles and all this stuff that it's going to be something one day. You'll see.
Bolalong he's in South Africa. He says he expects that his neighbor is doing the same job. He creates different things that are never ever the same and loads them onto trucks and they disappear.
That could be it. Yeah. I'm that guy. It's like my neighbor who I share a parking area with. It's like he goes, are you a prop guy? And I'm like, yep. And he goes, I knew it.
Oh, funny.
Because my garage is always, it's either full of junk or my car's full of junk, and then it's magically all gone, because I've taken it to set or used it,
And by the way, Derek Young, who I imagine you know, says, listening to Master Lowe while working on props, it doesn't get much better than this.
Sweet.
Nice profile picture, Derek.
Yeah, we like it. We like the
profile. Derek's an amazing, talented prop maker as well, and we met each other years ago online, started following each other's work online, and then it turned out he lived only a mile away from me down the street.
Oh, wow.
And he's a really, really talented guy.
Dave, to what degree do people with outside of work ask you to make shit for them?
A lot. And that's my bread and butter. I mean, working in television and stuff, it's not steady work. You're lucky if you get jobs back to back. So a good portion of my income, and I'm available, people, commissions, like last night, I was just drawing a logo for somebody, so it's birthday cards, gifts, you name it, I'll do it,
Including painting eggs, people.
Yes, he does eggs as well. The thing that you've done more recently, by the way, Bambas, you got a question?
I just asked it.
Okay, good.
Oh, sorry. I've got 2 phones.
Is that your wife?
I love it.
Okay, there you go. See, that's being creative. That's taking junk and making it work.
I had a question. So more recently, you've been posting stuff that I've found fucking brilliant, and they are iconic moments in films where you do a narrative around the piece as if it's been discovered in an archaeological dig. And a few of them, and I'll point out the one that I really loved was basically in the Indiana Jones film. Indiana Jones is in the front of the Nazi vehicle where he pulls off the Mercedes-Benz logo as he falls down and then goes underneath the truck. And what I saw you did is you matched 2 things beautifully. Is you wrote the narrative on paper that would look as if the paper was already 50 years or 60 years old.
Right.
And then this was found in the deserts of the Sahara and then you aged this prop, this Mercedes-Benz in order for it to look like it would have been something that would have been in the desert floor for, that much years. So how do those ideas now come about? And is there any vision of how that would be sold or done anything with?
It started years ago. I mean, a lot of those are old projects, and I'm actually getting inspired to make a few more. I guess as a prop maker, that became my art in a sense. It was just kind of fun to kind of. So many people recreate props for movies, which is great. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you. But I always like the idea of, I want to create something that could be in the movie, but you haven't seen yet. Does that make sense? And I love the element, like the old Cabinet of Curiosity or oddities, things like that. I love to tell a story with the props. So I started creating these kind of archaeological treasures, or things that somebody might have in a cabinet. Like, I don't know if I posted it recently, but, I made, do you guys remember Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the old cartoon, the Christmas one? Well, when the big snow monster's tooth gets pulled, I made that and kind of said, like this is the physical tooth. It's kind of taking these stories and making them realer by creating something tangible you could touch or feel, Yeah. And I love spark the imagination that, like I did a whole series based on children's books. Like I made the Little Prince's sword and made it all rusty, and I gave it again the archaeology. And there's something about creating the tag, like it's been archived in a museum somewhere and it's been found, and so you're like, oh wait, was that a story or was it real? So it kind of, you know what I mean? To actually have a tangible object from the story, it's that play on that, So I want to do more of those, and I've got a few more I'm gonna kind of get busy on soon. But like I said, I mean, that to me is like I guess my art form, something I make for myself,
Because I find them fascinating.
Keep the muscles going and growing and painting and being creative when you really have nothing else going on,
I mean, the way you made it so that they felt like they were archived images, like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the tooth of the monster that was pulled out, like that for me was just it made, like you said, a film which was so abstracted away come to life, because then it gave you the perception that there might actually have been a tooth, which is what you just said.
Like, was the story based on the tooth?
Yeah,
that's my point. It's
really brilliant.
Kind of, you explained what I was trying to say much shorter than I.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Derek Young says thank you, and it means a lot coming from you. So
that's sweet. Thank you, Derek.
We'd also like to recognize JC Barnett, who's in Kentucky right now listening to us. And as of yesterday, he's a grandpa. So we're going to congratulate JC on becoming a grandpa. And I believe he might not be the first of the grandkids, but if not,
Congratulations, JC.
Congratulations, JC. And I don't know if you know who JC is, but JC was the swim coach at Notre Dame High School. Which,
no kidding.
Yes, he was. And he's been on the show as well. So
nice.
And he's an avid listener.
My sister Megan and Monica say hello too.
Yes.
Megan wanted me to make sure and tell you that she was your friend before Ted's.
She was my friend before Ted's. I don't believe that's true. I tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because you moved from New York City to LA.
Well,
right?
Providence. I was going to school in Rhode Island.
Well, because you were later. You were late. But I went to drama class with Ted. And I remember Ted distinctly because in high school, he had on this stinky leather jacket he used to wear from New York, and he would smoke cigarettes outside all day. And at that age, it was something so cool to be with someone with a leather jacket smoking. So he was living he was like Fonzie from Happy Days at that moment.
Ted embraced the New York myth, right?
He did. He did.
He was going to be that bad boy from New York, you know?
What's the toughest thing or challenge that you face in your profession?
What was the toughest thing I faced?
In general, like as a prop maker, as a business owner, like what's the thing that you face? Like, oh fuck, it's like a roller coaster.
You know, it's a multi-leveled question, or answer. It's, from a creative standpoint, the toughest thing sometimes is when you're not having much input, like you're really just doing what they're telling you to do, and so you're not being allowed to you just become literally a guy holding a paintbrush. You're not being creative at all. You're just fulfilling their needs, and that can be tough. Because those jobs happen sometimes. Even though they're hiring you for your vision, your ideas, sometimes you're just there to create what they want, and they're telling you exactly what they want, every detail, every step. They're actually telling you where to go buy something, where to go get. So that's where it gets a little. That's where you just get. All right.
I'm a photographer, so I've never had this, but it's almost like they set everything up, and all they need me to do is push the button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that would suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would suck.
And so that, from a creative standpoint, that's tough. And also, sometimes personalities who are just, it should be blue, but they really want it pink, and there's no real good reason for it to be pink outside of they just like it pink. And you're like, but it looks fine. We'll make it pink. It's, but I mean, but that happens. That's the way the job is sometimes,
Have you ever been fired?
Oh,
what was
got another hour to talk?
What was the time when you thought you most deserved to be fired, and why was that?
Oh,
Andy, drop the mic. Good question.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, there's one job we could talk a lot about. I'm gonna leave that alone. But I worked at an art store once. I got a job for about a month in an art store, and I came in the next day from a shift, and the guy just goes, "Here's your check, thanks." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "We want people who are going to work." And I was like, "What did I do?" And then I realized I didn't. Yeah, he's right. I just kind of stood there in the art store like this, waiting for somebody to come up, and I wasn't really motivated working there. I was just kind of standing around, and if a customer came near me, I go, "Can I help you?" And they go, "No." I go, "Okay," and I just keep standing there like that.
Zero sales skills.
Yeah, zero. So I was really angry, and I left, and I was like, brr. And then when I got home, and I was like, "Yeah, he's right. I didn't do nothing. I was completely useless."
So how do your clients find you? Do you prospect clients, or is it the other way around, or is it like a job opening?
A little of both. I've been very lucky that one job, the people you work with on that job remember you and they bring you on to their next project. And so a lot of it's word of mouth. And you know, in the last few years, a lot of it is, you know, thank God for social media. People discover your work online and they reach out to you and ask, you know, and then in other cases, it's you're hustling. You're making the phone call. You're seeing, you know, you're sending your name or your resume out to a company and saying, hey, I can build stuff for you. I can make stuff. I can design. So it's like, I think anybody's career, you know, it's a little bit of everything, you know.
What happens?
Do you actually make like these little animation movies as a CV and you talk like, look what I can do, and then all of a sudden all these props are flying, or is it just or
No,
does it?
yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. You know?
Your CV. When you do this project, you were doing the prop design for HDTV for a lot of years.
Yeah, I worked on a lot of those shows. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I always like to watch because when you were doing it, like you mentioned earlier, they'd say, we want you to decorate a house with oversized Christmas gifts in the lawn.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of would create the easiest way to do something like that. When they task you with something like that, have you already done that? Or are you making that up in that moment?
A lot of stuff you're kind of you've made before and you're using those, you know, you know, you've got it. You're like, I know. And then a lot of stuff you totally bullshit. I've like I said, no fear. I've said yes to stuff that I have no idea how I'm going to build it. I have no idea how I'm going to make it. I just know I want to try and I'll figure it out somehow, you know? So
love it.
And sometimes those are huge failures, but the thing is they can't really fail, you know? So you just gotta, you gotta sit up all night and fix it and make it work, you know?
Yeah.
But so again, it's a, you know, it's a little both, you know, it's using old skills you've learned over the years. And again, a lot of it's just diving in and we'll figure it out.
So if you work with so many prima donnas, like how do you deal with that?
I've been really, really lucky. You know, sure, every once in a while, you know, the Hollywood cliches are true. There could be divas, there could be assholes, they could be, you know, blah, blah, blah. People slapping coffee out of people's hands, you know, that kind of stuff happens. But I've been really lucky that it really hasn't, you know. You know, I've worked with a few people that you have to charm them, you know, but I haven't really worked with anybody horrible, you know. So, you know, but again, everybody has their bad days too. So sometimes that one person you're working with on a Monday who's just, you're like, this is the worst human being on the planet. Suddenly the next day, you're best friends, you know. It's like,
yeah.
So
do you do the typical shit sandwich when you deal with these people? Like, I really like what you're doing, but I don't think this is going well. And I think it's going to be a great show. Do you do that?
Sure.
Did you hear that, everybody?
But I think, yeah. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it to you. But I think everybody does that in whatever job you have. You know, you've got
actually that's not true.
But speaking of getting fired,
yeah,
that's the fact that I haven't done that is what's gotten me fired. Where I'm
exactly.
Little too honest. I'm a little too like I speak my mind a little too often when I really shouldn't. So I'm working, you know, so it goes a long way to massage and you know, be charming.
I had a coaching call right before we got on the show, and I was talking to someone about how they're engaging the world, and they used a phrase and 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, oh shit, there's going to be a challenge in their lives if that's the phrase they're using. And the phrase was something in the world where I'm going for clarity and they're not. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, because I know the challenge becomes everybody is just dealing with their incapacity. So if you have no compassion to their incapacity, then you're judging them instead of just having the idea, hey, maybe they're just trying to figure it out like me.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Those situations get worse when everybody's under pressure and working on a deadline and trying to get things done in a very short amount of time. And you're working with a lot of people and a lot of hands a lot of chefs in the kitchen. So yeah.
And I'd like to ask you a more general question, taking us a little bit off topic, if that's okay, Bambos.
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Dave, the craziest setup, like it went to shit, but it still worked out. Share with us.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I hate this. You know what? I'm going to think of the story an hour after we get done talking. You know what I mean? It's, oh, man.
So nothing comes up in a way like, oh, fuck, we almost messed that one up.
There've been a few moments. There have been a few moments where little things happen, you know, but I can't think of a project that completely fell apart.
Has there been, has anyone ever been injured on a project where things have fallen on them because they weren't like created well enough?
No, that's where, you know, knock on wood. That's where I really take pride in what I've done in the past. It's like, outside of maybe somebody slipping off a ladder and falling or something, you know, I'm very proud of the fact that all the projects I've worked on with people I've hired and the crews I've had, no one's gotten seriously injured. Outside, like I said, outside of tripping or falling or something. But man, I've had a few close calls. I've, you know, myself, like using a chop saw really quickly one day, not thinking about it, and the blade cut through my shirt and just hairline on my stomach, and it was like that close, and I was like, and then I've had, like, I put a drill, like, holding a piece of wood, and I screwed right into the palm of my hand, you know. Moments like that, those things happen, but thank God, God, no serious injuries.
Change of subject, Andy, go.
So there's you know, there's a debate that's been held for several centuries now, or decades. Sorry, not centuries. And the question is, who's the actual father of Ted Lowe? Because he's so different than the rest of your family. So I'm trying to figure out who conceived your brother.
Dad had a real long vacation in Mexico once, we remember.
Okay.
Right? And then he spent a lot of time in other countries. So it's a tough one. I mean, you know, think about Megan. We're all brown-haired, brown-eyed. Megan's the only blonde, blue-eyed in the family, or green-eyed.
That's true. You're right. Yeah, all bets are off on that. So Ted Lowe, if you haven't seen the show Mr. Mom, it was an incredibly entertaining show. And Ted has been a dear friend to me for as long as I can remember. I used to sleep on his sofa at the Starlet Motel when Dad threw me out of the house. So, and if you know anything about the Starlet Motel, it was small enough for one person. So to have a second person on your sofa was not a very comfortable place to be. So he was really doing me a big favor by letting me be there. Yeah.
But you can say you stayed at the Starlight because it's become kind of a little bit of a legendary landmark.
It is. It's right across from Warner Brothers Studios. Ted's actually in The Last Letter. You know Ted from The Last Letter. Ted is highlighted in the first book that I did, The Last Letter, where he acted as the go-to man to save my ass when Dad was not in a good mood.
Look, I've got the extra large version.
So
have you read the book, by the way, Dave?
I have not. I will, but I have not yet.
We've got 2 minutes left. Now, you said that you didn't know how this was going to go because you're not particularly excited about being on anything, especially if it's live. How do you feel it went?
I feel good. I feel good. You know, it's. I just get nervous. You know, so what'll happen is, this will end, and I'll, for the next half hour, go, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why? Oh, that's the answer I should have had. Oh, I should have. And then I'll DM you, and I'll say, let's do this tomorrow, because now I have all the right answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll write back going, no, we're fine. And I'll be like, all right. You know, and then I'll probably watch this later this afternoon and just go into 3 hours of self-loathing.
Really? You would think that you had a bad moment on the show?
No, you know.
Let me guarantee you, I enjoyed your company, and I think the questions we asked could have been better, and that would have at least helped you to find better answers.
No, you guys made this very comfortable and easy.
Actually, speak for yourself, Andy. I'm cool.
Great. So we're blaming you, Dave. You're just not a good guest. It's all your fault. Self-loathe as much as you'd like.
I've been blamed for a lot worse.
Are there any questions you didn't want us to ask you?
Yeah, that we didn't ask, that we shouldn't have asked.
You shouldn't have asked me to be on the show.
Yeah. Why did you say yes to this show? Because out of all the things, if I'm you, I'm thinking, God damn, why do I need to do this in my life? So what made that you said yes?
I said yes because you were interested. I was like, well, if you're interested in hearing things I have to say, sure, I'll talk to you.
Great.
And I love the podcast. I'm catching up on a lot of old episodes, and the one with Ted and Kirk were terrific. So I figured you have to complete the trilogy, right? So
yeah, thank you.
So now you got to get Megan and Monica on the show.
I know. I got to think of a concept for the two of them, right? Because Megan and Monica, I don't exactly know what my angle would be yet. I need an angle. So if you have an angle, DM me, and then we'll find a way to get them on the show as well.
Who's your real father?
Why are your eyes blue?
Yeah.
We do not know. You look like none of us. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All the best. Hey, by the way, if people want to track your work, where would they go? So we have that.
Dave Lowe Design on Instagram, and davelowedesign.com is my webpage, and in there are links to Facebook and a blog I used to write, but yeah, those are the two main: Dave Lowe Design and davelowedesign.com.
It's down in the comments, folks.
It's in the comments. Bolalong says, I love hearing the areas of work I'd never thought of in my life, and I really enjoyed it. That's sweet. So thank you, Bolalong, for joining. And JC Barnett says, better than yesterday, which is not necessarily speaking to our show alone, Bambo. So I don't know if I should say thank you or screw you, JC. What is that? Better than yesterday. Oh, we love you. Congratulations on everything for JC, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time, Dave. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we're going to see everyone tomorrow. Tomorrow, Andy, we have a very special guest.
Do we?
When I figure out who it is.
I was going to say, that's how you stall for time. Tomorrow, we've got a really special guest. And Andy, can you fill the time between now and
Coming Out to Millions with Mike Lamele. I think it's a good show.
That's going to be fun. Yeah, he basically, he had a book that was coming out. And he said, before the book comes out, it would be nice to sort of let people know that in the book, I'm going to reveal that I'm gay. And he woke up, and then a few thousand shares later, he actually saw that the world had shared it around, and he now is going to talk about that journey and what it meant to him. I think it's wild. Think about it. You kind of share something, and then you wake up, and then you see it shared all over the place. It would be a wild experience. So he's going to talk about that for the hour tomorrow.
Yeah. And where we're going to do that, Mr. Shalev?
We're going to do it on A Wonderful Chaos, Dimitri, on A Wonderful Chaos.